people call it YOLO lah, right? You only live once. And some younger people take it to mean like, I don't know, jumping off planes, doing bungee jump, doing silly things, like since you only have one life. But to me, if we only have one life, then we better get it right.
What actually motivated you to sign on into the army to begin with?
Well, that's a funny story actually. My friends that have known me since I was young, perhaps even you or our listeners looking at me and they're like, what? Daniel is an army guy, totally don't look like. That's what. And when I first went on, all my friends, I used to be in a choir in Victoria School, in VJC. So when I signed on, everybody say, the choir guy, like Daniel signed on, like what's going on? So little did they know that, I signed on primarily because, then my dad was already pretty old. He was in his 70s. And I saw how hard he worked, as a taxi driver to bring my brother and I up. And I was kind of toying with the thought, should I sign on? Should I not sign on? Is that really what I want to do? So, but I think it was very, very providential in the end when they offered me a scholarship. One of the first things that I did was to take away the pains of paying the bills, right? Electricity bills and stuff at home. So I guess it was part out of need, part wanting to provide for my family. And when I went to university, I was not just, given like an allowance. I was given a pay whilst I was studying. So I actually never really saw myself as a student. I saw myself as like being paid to study. So you better study and, make sure you do well. So when I was staying in hostel in NUS, I was in NUS Business School. So I would actually set an alarm, not to wake up, but to sleep. My friends look at me and say, this guy siao, like, how come he's like, I will be hanging out with them, maybe having supper, then my alarm ring already, then I go and sleep. Some of them joke like, call me Cinderella because alarm ring, then must go and sleep. But that was really how disciplined I was, and how seriously I took the scholarship and studying. And yeah, I mean, that's really how I signed on. It was really because out of money, out of providing for the family, and actually signed on very close towards ORD. So I served almost then our time probably 2.5 years, right? Then towards finishing, then I signed on before I went to study. So yeah, that's a little bit of a backstory of how that happened.
So all in, you spent 10 plus 4 years?
I did 2.5 years, then I went to study for 4 years, and then we did our vacation attachments. Everybody go on holiday break, but we'll go back and work, right? And then after that, I served my 6-year bond in the SAF. Okay. Yeah, and I ended up, after studies, I was there for about 7 years because then they offered me a promotion, which I took up. And yeah, I finished my bond and then I decided to leave lah. Yeah, and I'm not sure how interested you are to hear about my motivations for that.
That's actually my second question, because I do understand the reason behind you leaving SAF is, well, it's a variety of reasons. You found yourself unfulfilled, time poor as well. At which point did that realization kick in for you over that 7 years period?
That's a really good question. I guess when I was in uni, I was always quite an okay student, a bit nerdy throughout the years, not super fantastic. But I guess in business school, I started to really flourish. I think that's when I really found it came alive for me. So I was on the dean's list in business school, doing really well. And in the 4th year, a group of us from NUS Business School we represented the school. We flew all the way to Washington, in the US, Seattle, Washington. And we took part in a case competition, right? So all the best business schools send their teams, then we go and compete and do a 48 hour. They give you a case for 48 hours, and then later you have to make a presentation to the senior management. And we prepared for all those cases, lots of boring cases like manufacturing companies, how to turn it around and all that. We were very lucky to get Starbucks because Starbucks was founded in Seattle, so that was really fun. And we actually emerged as champions. So then, I was very excited. I was like, oh, okay. And I was very interested in actually consulting. Yeah, so I was then thinking, oh, perhaps I could have a job in consulting, but then I had a bond to fulfill, right? So one of the consulting companies actually approached me. They were really keen to hire me, and through the interview process, they said, when can you start? then I was like, oh, but I got
7 years later.
I said, oh, but I got a small issue. I got a bond. I can't really start. And then they say, oh, don't worry about the bond. We will speak to HR and we will sort it out. I was like, huh? For real? Like, really, man? Then that was like on Friday, and then on Monday they call me back and say, oh, no, we don't have a policy of buying out bonds, at the entry level, unless you have a skill or a specialty, that we really want to grow in the company, which was true lah. So there I was, thinking that I was going to, of course it was firstly a decision, do I want to break my bond? I was very grateful for the scholarship. Otherwise, it would have been very hard to put myself through school. But here I was on one hand thinking, hey, maybe I could do what I was good at, consulting or wearing a suit and a jet-setting lifestyle. Little did I know, like a few weeks later, I was in a training shed in the rain, my clothes were all wet, and I was bitten by mosquitoes. Like back to reality lah, basically. But I think I really am very grateful for that experience that I had in the military. The first few years was a lot about finding myself. Then I must be in my early 20s, and I was first of all training officer cadets, and that was a very interesting experience of trying to fit into organizations. Yeah, because with my background and my now I know my style of leadership, it wouldn't fit into, say, your inject in the army lah. People and like scolding people. But at the same time, I guess as part of wanting to fit in, I was very, very harsh towards my trainees. Yeah, and to the extent that some of them even wrote in feedback and gave me a feedback of like, how come his personality, like one moment he's so nice and the other moment he's a switchblade, and then he's like scolding us, punishing us. But I think that was, I apologized to them in the end, but I told them that it was also a journey to discover myself and to be secure in my own brand of leadership, which so instrumental. I wouldn't be here leading my own team in my own business, which we'll talk a bit more later, without all those initial pains and experiences. And then I think even before thinking about leaving, I was really thinking about how I can do well, because here I am so excited. I just graduated. I wanted to, climb the corporate ladder, as many of us wanted to do when we were young, hungry. I was very hungry, ready to do anything, whatever the bosses. If there was a mission that was difficult with little resources and little time, I'll put my hand up and say, send me. I'm willing to put in the work and do whatever it takes lah. Yeah, so I think year after year, I started to prove myself in the organization through different roles. And I think that's one of the beauty. For the listeners, I'm not sure the age group of your listeners, but those who are younger or might have kids that are thinking of signing on, I think that's great that they put us through different roles. I get to experience being in command at a very young age, and a lot of responsibility. We get to instructional tours. We get to train, because a big part of the army is training, either in those who are doing the NS or the reservist part of the house, and we get to do staff work in policy making. Yeah, so I was rotated around through the different tours. I think I did quite well. You called me major when we first came in. So I got promoted to rank of major at age 30, which I think, I don't say this to Hao Lian or to boast, but I worked hard to get there. Right? I'm grateful for bosses along the way who recognized that and rewarded me for that. But I also felt like it was like, I don't know, to use the army analogy that maybe guys in Singapore can relate to, right? It felt a bit like a 2.4 run. Because the 2.4 and a 400-meter track is 6 rounds, right? So everybody knows how tiring that is. So for the first year I was there, then we run then you finish the first few rounds. Then the third, fourth, fifth rounds get a bit tiring, right? But then you feel like, okay, and that's how I felt in the third, fourth and fifth years. I started to feel a bit tired from all the late nights, all the stretch assignments. If you want to do well, then you have to be given more, right? To really test whether you are, worth your salt, right? And I think this is the same in the private sector, not just in the public service. But it became like, wow, this year is an important year for you, right? So you better work hard. And then next year came, and I'm not saying this specific to any organization, but bosses in general, organization in general, whenever one day wake up and tell the employee, hey, this year not important for you, you don't need to work so hard. so it felt like the 2.4 run, right? On the fourth round, also need to run very fast. Fifth round also need to run very fast. Then 6th round, you run very fast. And it's a bit funny because I did 7 years. Then I ran back the 6th round, usually 2.4. We reached there, we're like, panting, and then we finished. But I finished my 6 years, but the race hadn't ended. You know what I mean? Like 7 years. Oh, very good. Oh, go and run again. And I saw that this race, this rat race as some people call it, never ends at 7 years, 8 years, 10 years. And with the students and clients that I work with now, some of them have been running that race for 20, 30 years and are extremely burnt out and are continuing to race. In fact, some people I spoke with somebody just yesterday and said that he's been working in the company for more than 20 years and he was just laid off like that so quickly. And I think in our current environment, unemployment is on the rise and all that. But back to your question, the point that I really started to know and question was, I guess, when my bond was ending. I think that is a natural decision. Like, should I stay? Should I leave? Initially, it was, for those who didn't know me, it was, and when people found out, it was almost like, wow, this guy not loyal to the organization. Like, wow, he's thinking of leaving, which I really, really didn't like. Yeah. I am somebody who is very loyal. And when my loyalty is questioned with a wrong, with little understanding of who I am or what my motivations are, I got triggered. Yeah. And to me, it's like, I can still be loyal to my country and my organization, and I can still leave. I can still serve in the reserves, and I still serve in reservists now as a NS commander as well. But to me, if you and for those who are thinking of designing a portfolio career or career transitions, in my honest opinion, there is nothing wrong to search. In fact, you must search, because if you can design only when you have considered options well, and if you say you decide to stay, then you're convicted of staying. You're convicted of your decision to stay or to leave, right? Whereas if you stay, on the other hand, I see a lot of people in organizations, and this is both in the public and private sector, who are very unhappy at work. And every tea break, every conversation that they have with their friends, Chinese New Year, or what have you, and then they're complaining, wow, very sian, politics, this person got promoted, I didn't get promoted. And to me, it's like, you need to be convicted of your choice and know what value you bring to the organization, regardless where you're at. Sorry, I just rambled on because to me, it's a important point of decision that a lot of people just stay in their comfort zones. And I think whether you stay or you leave, you should be convicted of that.
Arrival of your kids may also have played a part in that decision as well.
Spot on to that, yeah. So I think for those of us who have kids, they have a huge impact in the way we see our lives. Suddenly you're responsible for a life in front of you, right? And a lot of soul searching at that point, I think. Yeah, like we all think and say that we are working hard for our kids, right? But I think there are a lot of parents. I know of a colleague who is, he even calls it, he even says and gives himself that term that I'm a weekend parent. Like somebody who looks after the kids the whole week, and then on weekends they come back home. So they only see the kids for twice a week. And it sounds really freeing and quite shook. But on the other hand, I also felt like that wasn't the kind of parent that I wanted to be. I started to really do more soul searching. Like, everybody races, everybody tries to climb, but it started to dawn on me, like, what if my ladder is on the wrong wall? And I reached the top of the wall, and I'm like, gosh, right, I spent so much effort trying to climb up, so sweaty, so tired, and I didn't reach where I wanted to be. Yeah, it was, hand on heart, I do have huge respect for all the organizations I work for. I believe in the mission and what they do. Lots of good people do good work there. But we only have one life, right? People call it YOLO, right? You only live once. And some younger people take it to mean, like, I don't know, jumping off planes, doing bungee jump, doing silly things, like, since you only have one life. But to me, if we only have one life, then we better get it right. You don't have a second chance to relive that again. And I guess that's what kind of motivated me. Did I know that I will be where I am today, with a business, and impacting so many lives and designing my career? I've worked from across the public service to the private sector to, doing freelance, working 3 days a week. Would I have known that I would have gone on that journey? No. But I only made each step, I could only see the next few steps, and I took that next step forward. And I guess life is a bit like that. You never really know the whole journey in front of you. It's the same like when we're driving a car, right? You cannot wait. Let's say you want to go from, I don't know, Changi to Jurong. You cannot wait for all the traffic lights to turn green at one go, and then you go, right? And I always think that's a great analogy, because you drive, and when traffic light turns red, you stop. When it turns green, you go. And I think that's how we just have to navigate life. Nobody has all the perfect answers or perfect information from the get-go.